to our channel. Now we'll start the axillary vein and also the axillary lymph nodes, and next we'll continue with the clinical anatomy. So if you see the axillary vein here, this the blue color structure is the axillary vein. So it's also like same like axillary artery is just beside to axillary artery. So axillary vein is actually a continuation of basilic vein. So if you remember, axillary artery is a continuation of subclavian artery, right? But in the case of vein, it's a continuation of basilic vein. And it's joined by vena commitans of brachial artery, because later next the brachial artery comes. So it's joined by vena commitans of brachial artery above lower border of teres major. So this is teres major muscle, above lower border of teres major muscle. Here the vena commitans are joining, especially the vena commitans of brachial artery are joining here, and that is the medial side of axillary artery. So here, so this axillary artery, this is medial side. So here, exactly here, the brachial arteries vena commitans will come and join. So at the outer border of first rib becomes subclavian artery. So you can see this is the outer border of upper rib, right? First rib. So outer border of first rib is the starting of axillary artery. So beyond this, there is nothing but at the outer border of first rib it becomes a subclavian vein. So this is axillary vein. Then here upon it will turn into subclavian vein, because here it will turn into subclavian artery, and it receives the cephalic vein in upper part. So this axillary vein receives the cephalic vein mainly in the upper part, and no axillary sheet is around the vein, and it is free to expand during times of whenever there is higher blood flow. So whenever there is no axillary sheet, so that the vein can accommodate more blood and it can dilate more whenever there is no axillary sheet around it, especially in the cases of high blood flow. So this is about axillary vein. Now we'll discuss about the axillary lymph nodes. Already in the mammary gland anatomy we discussed, but here some more points are added, like the axillary lymph nodes are scattered in fibrofatty tissue of axilla. Very important, it's scattered, they're all scattered in the fibrofatty tissue of axilla, and they are divided into total 5 groups. We know already those 5 groups: anterior group, apical group, central group, posterior group, lateral group, right? So we will discuss them one by one. The nodes of anterior or pectoral group. So you can see here, this is the anterior group or the pectoral group just beside the pectoralis minor muscle. This is the anterior group or the pectoral group which lie along the lateral thoracic vessels. So lateral thoracic vessels, and that is along the lower border of pectoralis minor, and they receive lymph from the upper half of the anterior wall of trunk and also from major part of breast. So from major part of breast and also from the upper anterior wall of the trunk, upper half of anterior wall of trunk. So these are the anterior group of axillary lymph nodes. Next, coming to the posterior group. The posterior axillary lymph nodes are also called as scapular group, because they lie along the subscapular vessels on the posterior fold of axilla. So the posterior group are present on the posterior fold of axilla. They receive the lymph mainly from posterior wall of upper half of trunk and from axillary tail of breast. So they are receiving mainly from the posterior and also from the axillary tail of breast. Next, coming to the third one, that is the lateral group. So you can see here, this is the lateral group. So the lateral group, actually we are discussing in an order how the lymph flows. First the lymph flows from the anterior group to the posterior group. From the posterior group it goes into the central group. So that is the reason why we are talking in an order wise. If you remember in our mammary gland anatomy, first the anterior, posterior, next they go to the central, after the central they go to lateral, from the lateral they will go to the apical. That is the order. But here we are also talking in a zigzag pattern. So till now we have discussed about anterior group, next we have discussed about posterior group. Now we are going to discuss about the lateral group. So the lateral group lie along the upper part of humerus, which is mainly medial to the axillary vein, and they receive the lymph from the upper limb. So they receive the lymph from the upper limb. Next, coming to the central group. The central group lie in the fat of upper axilla. They receive the lymph from the preceding groups and drain into the apical group. They receive some direct vessels from floor of axilla. The intercostobrachial nerve is closely related to them. So intercostobrachial nerve is in close relation with the central group of axillary lymph nodes. Next, coming to the apical groups. The apical group says here, the apical group is also called as infraclavicular group, because it's deep to the pectoral fascia and just below the clavicle, and along the axillary vessels they receive the lymph from the central group, from the upper part of the breast, and from the thumb and its web. The lymphatics from the thumb accompany the cephalic vein. So you need to remember that apical group is with the cephalic vein and the central group is with the intercostobrachial nerve. So these are about axillary lymph nodes. Now we'll discuss about clinical anatomy. So first we'll start with the Erb's point. So this point is called Erb's point. This is nothing but our first upper trunk. The upper trunk, it's made up of roots from C5 and C6. C5 and C6 together join together and form the upper trunk. So if you remember the brachial plexus diagram. So here you can see C5, C6 both join together to form the upper trunk. So mainly the site of injury is one region of upper trunk of brachial plexus, Erb's point, where the 6 nerves meet. Here actually the 6 nerves meet, you can see here from the C5, C6 and its branch, that is the suprascapular nerve, and also it is divided into anterior division, posterior division, right, and it's having a second branch, that is the nerve to subclavius. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So total 6 nerves are meeting at this. So this is called as Erb's point. So injury to the upper trunk causes the Erb's paralysis. So what happens in Erb's paralysis is mainly, you can see here in this diagram, this is the Erb's paralysis, where the cause of injury is due to undue separation of head from the shoulder. So head of the humerus is separated from the shoulder, which is commonly encountered in the birth injury or like in fall of shoulder. You can see here in birth injury or fall on shoulder or any during anesthesia. So like these conditions it may take place. And the nerve roots of course are C5 and C6, mainly C5, partly C6, and the muscles which are paralyzed are biceps brachii, because they are in the head of humerus, right, near to head of humerus, in the humerus, biceps brachii, deltoid, brachialis, brachioradialis, partly even the supraspinatus and infraspinatus and supinator. So these are all the muscles which are involved in the paralysis of Erb's paralysis. And the deformity is the position of limb. An arm hangs by the side. It is adducted and medially rotated. You can see it's adducted and medially rotated. And the forearm is extended and pronated in pronation position, means like this. So it will become like this in Erb's paralysis. And the deformity is also known as policeman's tip hand or porter's tip hand, because this is how the police catches the handle. And disability, the following movements are lost, like abduction and lateral rotation of arm, especially of shoulder is lost, flexion and supination of forearm are lost, biceps and supinator jerks are lost because these both muscles are affected, sensations are lost over the small area over the lower part of deltoid because deltoid muscle is also affected. Now coming to the Klumpke's paralysis. So what happens here? The site of injury is lower trunk of brachial plexus. So the lower trunk of brachial plexus is mainly formed by C8 and T1, right? C8 and T1 form the lower brachial plexus. So cause of injury is undue abduction of arm, as in clutching something with the hands after a fall from height, or sometimes in birth injury. So nerve roots are mainly T1 and partly C8. So mainly T1 is involved. There mainly the C5 is involved. And here the muscles paralysis are intrinsic muscles of hand because of T1, and ulnar flexors of wrist and fingers because of C8. And the deformity is mainly due to position of hand, claw hand, due to unopposed action of long flexors and extensors of fingers. In a claw hand, there is hyperextension of metacarpophalangeal joints and flexion at the interphalangeal joints. So like this is a claw hand. This is mainly due to the Klumpke's paralysis, where there is injury either in birth injury or due to fall or clutching of hand from the height. So here mainly the lower trunk of brachial plexus is involved, and here mainly the upper trunk of brachial plexus is involved. So this is a complete claw hand. So cutaneous anesthesia and analgesia in a narrow zone along the ulnar border of forearm and hand, and Horner's syndrome if T1 is injured proximal to white ramus communicans. To first thoracic sympathetic ganglion, there is ptosis, meiosis and hydrosis, and also there is an anophthalmos and loss of ciliospinal reflex may be associated. This is because of injury to sympathetic fibers to head and neck that leave the spinal cord. So if T1 is affected, then there may be a chance of Horner's syndrome. You can see here the eye one side will become narrowed like this. And vasometer changes the skin area with sensory loss is warmer due to arteriolar dilation, and it is also drier due to absence of sweating as there is loss of sympathetic activity. And trophic changes long standing case of paralysis lead to dry scaly skin, nails crack easily with atrophy of pulp of fingers. So to knock a bell, we need a serratus anterior muscle because we do overhead abduction of our hand. So for that we need mainly serratus anterior. So this nerve is also called as nerve of bell. So injury of nerve to serratus anterior, what happens? A sudden pressure on shoulder from above and carrying heavy loads on shoulder. This both may cause this. The deformity is winging of scapula, that is excessive prominence of medial border of scapula because the serratus anterior attached on medial side of scapula, right? So pull of muscle keeps the medial border against the thoracic wall. Disability, loss of pushing, punching actions during attempts or pushing, there occurs swinging of scapula. Arm cannot be raised beyond 90 degrees, that is overhead abduction which is performed by serratus anterior is not possible. And if you see about axilla, what is clinical? Axilla has abundant axillary hair, infection of hair follicle, sebaceous gland, give rise to boils which are common in this area. The axillary lymph nodes drain lymph not only from upper limb but also from breast and anterior and posterior body walls, right, above the level of umbilicus. Therefore, infections or malignant growths in any part of their territory of drainage give rise to involvement of axillary lymph nodes. Examination of these lymph nodes, therefore, is important clinical practice. So left axillary nodes to be palpated by right hand, so oppositely. So if you are palpating the left axillary nodes, we need to palpate with right hand, and if right axillary nodes, we need to palpate by left hand. So you can see the axillary nodes different just above the umbilical. Below the umbilical, the lymph nodes are called inguinal lymph nodes. So these are all the axillary lymph nodes. So an axillary abscess should be incised through the floor of axilla midway between the anterior and posterior axillary fold and nearer to medial wall in order to avoid injury to main vessels running along the anterior, posterior, lateral walls. So axillary arterial pulsations can be felt against lower border of lateral wall of axilla. So lower part of lateral wall of axilla, axillary pulsations can be felt. In order to check bleeding from the distal part of limb in injuries, operations, amputation, the artery can be effectively compressed against humerus in lower part of lateral wall of axilla. So this is all about axilla anatomy. We have completed it. Next we'll start with back anatomy. It's very small chapter. Next we have the superficial veins, lymphatic drainage, cutaneous nerves.